Awesome. Just bringing in everyone. All right. Welcome, everyone. This is happy everyone could join us today during the day. We're very excited for this conversation. Actually, this is probably one of the ones I'm most excited for due to the topics and age ranges that we'll be covering. I'm here with, obviously, Peter Langens, my Dutch counterpart from the club. So I'll turn it over to Peter, and he can go ahead and introduce Anjo.
All right. Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah. Welcome to another Dutch coach. I'm always happy to introduce like Dutch coach. This morning I was on a call with a friend of mine of the Dutch Soccer Federation, like the assistant national women's coach. We had a great talk. We're trying to get him in maybe in the next month to see if he gets permission from the federation to have a webinar in the next month too. So that would be interesting. And it's always, and I think it's very good for coaches to get like different views about like how other countries or how other coaches are doing certain ways of training, how they're interpreting like new things, and one of the things is what we're trying to do at Tecumseh is like introducing like technical periodization and the speaker of today, Anjo Coppus, who was a Dutch coach with the youth professional club, VVV Venlo, and he was the director of a youth academy in the province where I lived, because that's where we kind of like met, right? And the main reason is like how I connected with him was like he wrote a book in Dutch about let him play and the technical periodization, and he is now translating it to English. So it would be good for him to start introducing is like his philosophy, and we're really like your input when he certain principles, how he wrote it down. And if things are not clear, make sure you're asking is like there's a couple ways we can interact today. There's a raise hand button on the bottom of your screen. You can use that, then we can pretty quick interact where you can also use the chat to answer question, and then Ryan will be have it organized and desktop, and he will ask the question. If there's a lot of the same questions, Ryan will ask Anjo to go in. But enough talk from me. I'm handing off the microphone to Anjo. Anjo, go ahead and welcome at the Tecumseh Soccer Club coaching webinar.
Okay, thank you, Peter, for the introduction. I'm gonna put on a slide, so I hope you can still see me, but you can hear me talking. And we'll just go through the slides, and then I can say a little bit about myself. So I hope my my English is all right, but we'll find out. Let's see. Okay, can everybody see the screen now?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, it's my view on football. My method is called Let Them Play. It's a tactical periodization for football. And I'm from the Netherlands, so I speak Dutch. I've got a bachelor in sports education. I'm a PE teacher for 18 years. I've been playing football or soccer, as you say, for 40 years. Now I still play for the veterans and of VVV Venlo. It's the hometown town that I grew up in. And I've been coaching for 25 years now. At VVV Venlo, I coached, there was an amateur club. I coached every age group there was, from U5 to U19. At VVV Venlo, which is a pro club in the highest division in the Netherlands. I coached U11, U12, U13, and U15. At Brabantia club in Eindhoven, maybe you know PSV Eindhoven. Brabantia is an amateur club there. I've been a head of youth academy for 2 years. I also did some work in America, in the USA, 5 summer camps. I worked for Eurotech soccer camps, and there I coached between 3 years old micros, which was very exhausting to coach them for 1.5 hours, all the way up to 21-year-old college kids that wanted to become professionals in America. I'm a Coerver and Total Soccer Method licensed coach, which means that I'm used to that, and some coaches are really into that. I'm not so into that, but I'm going to talk about that later on. I'm a UEFA C and B licensed coach, and I also got my NSCAA youth diploma. And in the bottom, you kind of see me in at different ages, but still the same haircut. Only on the right, it's a bit different. Okay. Well, that was me. I hope you all have your cell phones ready or something, because I'd like you to go to menti.com and use the code 2661. There you're going to find a couple of questions so I can get to know you too. Let's see if I can go there myself. Here you can see that, www.menti.com, and you get a couple of questions. What age group you coach? U12 and younger, so try to fill that out. I coach boys, I coach men, and I kind of get to know you a little bit. Okay, Ryan, how many people are in the webinar?
17 right now.
17, that's 12, 15, 18, that's 19, good. Okay, very good. So, okay, very good to see more girls coaches than men's coaches. That's nice to see. Because girls teams are different teams to coach than boys teams. I experienced. Okay, nice. I get a lot of questions like tactical periodization. Well, what age group is that? Well, I intend to say it's from U10 and up, because that's when they're mentally ready to start work tactics and stuff like that. Okay, good. Next question. You can fill out. Coach less than 5 years, between 5 and 10 years. I coach over 10 years. And how much you know about tactical periodization. Okay, a lot of coaches that have a lot of experience. That's good to see. No really beginning coaches. 2 people know a lot about tactical periodization. Something little. Okay, it's always hard for me to see what the starting level is to talk about, because sometimes I get carried away and I talk so much that the other coaches don't understand it, so I have to find a way in between that. Okay, very well. Go too fast. Okay, that went great. Now we go back to Menti and we use different code, 3529, and I'll be hosting that one too. This is more about how.
Can you put up that code again?
Yes, that's 300529. How do you manage your subs? So how do you use substitutions? Because a big part of my philosophy, let them play, is that you let your whole team play. If you have 15 players, that's your squad, that's you have to use. And basically that's a topic we can talk for about an hour. Okay, that's 10 people. Is there anyone who wants to say something about this? Why he chose this, what he chose and what he chose? Anyone who wants to speak up his mind?
I think that the biggest thing is if a lot of us are coaching youth, a lot of us are rotating players or balancing playing time the best we can.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that as we get older, we tend to less and less or try to get more merit based. And I think that's when, you know, our knowledge of periodization can help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If I talk about this with coaches in Holland and I ask them, okay, what team do you put in? They always say, or most of the times they say, I'll put in my best players. But when I ask them, okay, what are you going to do at halftime where you're 3-0 behind? Who are you going to play then? Then they say, well, then we're going to play the subs. But from a mentally side, if you start with your best 11 players, you basically said to the other players, you're not that good. But if you stop them at halftime, if you're 3-0 behind, you ask a bigger performance from players that you did not have confidence in than if you would play the other players from the start. So that's basically, yeah, a mistake a lot of coaches make, even in professional, to always start with the best 11 and leave the other players out. I would not recommend that. I would say, okay, if you make a decision at the beginning of the season that these are my best 15 players, then you have to use all those players. And not just the best 11 and some subs, but okay. 7-5-2 to use the best team at the start. Rotate subs in games through the season. That's what I like most. Adjust the player's input at practice and sub accordingly. That is the biggest group. Is there someone from that group that can say something about that? Or wants to say something about that?
Everybody can unmute their own mic and in the coaches thing here, I've made sure that we all can.
No one? Okay, then I'll continue. Okay, you see player one having the ball. What player do you want him to pass the ball to?
Anjo, I would say if you have a player that you want to look at passing to, it's obviously to keep possession, but it would be a situation where you want to play the ball forward to eliminate lines or eliminate the opponent so that you can attack the goal and threaten him behind the back four.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking to advance the ball from one zone to the next. So I'm not sure where if you're specifically saying an area on the field, but I'll just say if it's anywhere on the field with a player that has the ball, you want to advance the ball forward to eliminate the lines. You want to move the ball to unbalance the opponents so that it's not just moving the ball for the sake of moving it, but there's got to be a purpose to it.
Mm-hmm. And in this situation, what player would that be? Because you can choose.
Right now, the only screen that I see right now is view on football, let them play. So I don't see anything.
I think it's the next one on the Mentimeter. I just saw it. I was doing the
I'm
same
sorry.
thing you were, Dave. I had Zoom over.
Oh, I'm looking at the Zoom. I wasn't even looking at
it. I just looked over too. There you go.
Angel's really trying to test us, eh? So, all right. Now that I understand the question, it's a little bit more specific. If I'm looking, I'll take. I mean, with his body language, he's saying to look out to play to 2, 3, or 4. But I would prefer the opportunity, if I could, play into 6.
Okay, good choice. Let's see. No one chose 1 to keep possession of the ball. But the player who had the ball, so they all wanted to pass. 4 gets a lot of choices. 6 and 7. Let's see, who was 4? Who chose 4? Who can tell something about the choice for the 4?
I chose 4.
Okay, Brandon, why is that?
I chose 4 because I was a wide player, so I'd like to get the ball wide straight away, and it's a 1v1. That's my personal preference. What's that?
You've been waiting there for 5 minutes, and now you want the ball.
That's it.
Yeah, okay, good. Anyone else?
Plus, it's a longer pass. It's a longer pass as well.
Uh-huh.
It's a longer pass as well.
Yes. Okay. Who chose 7?
I chose 7.
Okay, Gareth. Why 7?
I think there's a good chance you're going to complete it. It's not going to get intercepted. I think you're going forward. He's relatively got a little bit of space, and if he's half decent, he can link it up to the front man or go wide himself. So it's a combination of the pass is going to make it, probably. You advance in your position, you're maybe breaking a line, and you're trusting him to make another good decision.
Okay, yeah. In my philosophy, it's a lot of times we as coach want players to make decisions, but basically the player has to make that decision. But how can we get the player on the field to make the decision that we as coaches want them to make as well? That's basically the start of my philosophy. But basically there is no bad choice in these players. Even the number 5 can be reached if his run is perfect or if his pass is perfect, but it's a difficult option. If player 1 is very skilled, he can get the ball to 5, or maybe the 6 can make a great run. But yeah, we as coaches are looking to keep possession of the ball, and if players lose possession, then we come up with solutions. Okay, what other choice did you have? So basically, let them play. Says, okay, we give the game to the players, and we let them decide. We don't have to yell from the sidelines. We don't have to cue things. We let them play. It's their game. Okay. So this was my part where we interacted with the crowd I've got, because I've seen some webinars where there was someone talking for like an hour and a half, and now I kind of grasped you. If you have questions, anything, just ask Ryan. Give it a thumbs up or something is a signal that.
Yeah, I think there's a hand raise or whatever. I think I've given everybody. We actually have a lot of people we know from clubs all over Ontario, so anybody can chime in. Feel free to unmute yourself whenever.
But basically, after every slide, I will ask if there are questions, but feel free to interrupt me. I'm a teacher that likes to get interrupted. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Good. Well, on the right, you see my book. And on the left, you see Frank Jacobs. Frank Jacobs and I were coaching a U11 team. And as you see on the bottom of the screen, you see the field size. We played 1-3-1-3 with our team. And VVV Venlo is a small club. We are not nearly as big as Ajax or PSV or Feyenoord or other big clubs in the Netherlands, but we still play them in the league. And the most difficult thing is if you have 10-year-old players, how can you let them win, beat the better teams? How do you beat better teams? If you have children, because they're 10, 11, 12 years old, they're still children. They have maximum 5 years of experience in playing soccer. They're equally developed as players from PSV or Ajax. So how could we practice with our players to beat them? And we had to play smart. That was basically what Frank and I came up with. On okay, how do we practice to make them smarter players? So we started developing exercises where we played with attacking and defending, and defenders coming from different directions. Tried to use the positions as much as we can. So strikers were in front, defenders were behind that, midfield players were standing in the same position as they were in the game. We started developing. Then when we worked for 2 years with that, it worked out fine. We beat Ajax, we beat PSV, we beat Borussia Dortmund at tournaments with basically less talented players. I don't like to use the word talent, but if you have players from different clubs, I always see them as equally talented. And well, after 2 years of working together, I found out that there were a lot of exercises that did not ask the maximum of my players. So I got rid of all the exercises. I was my own coach. I started from scratch. I took my experience that I had with being a teacher with me, my soccer experience, and I started building new drills, new exercises, everything from a new view. And when I finished those exercises, I ran into other coaches and said, wow, that's great. Can I have that? Can I have those exercises? I come across a lot of coaches that search the internet finding new exercises. But the problem with that is that an exercise does not make a great player. Each exercise, you want to achieve something with that. You want players to play better games, so you use that exercise to make them perform better in games. And to me, most coaches use exercises to have like a fun game. And then we expect players from all the different fun games we do to use that information in the field. And it's very difficult for players to use all the information they get at practice in the field. So I got rid of a lot of exercises, designed my own exercises. But then when coaches asked, okay, can I have those exercises? I still wanted to tell the story about behind those exercises. And that's how kind of my book got written, so that I could give other coaches my exercises with the story. So it's not that I'm kind of the professor that said, I want to write a book, I want to tell the world about it. No, it's more that I wrote a book and everybody started asking for it. And I didn't want to have a book that contained 200 pages and that came from a copier and said, here you have it. So basically, that's my book. Okay, any questions about that? Ryan, any thumbs?
No, no. I think they want you to get into it.
Okay.
And that's me. That's me personally. I'm very excited about this topic, and I know a couple of the other coaches I know and have worked with on this call are clamoring for it. So.
Okay, cool. Well, this is basically what we as Dutch coaches get taught. We know Wiel Coerver, we know Raymond Verheijen, we know Bert van Lingen, we know Louis van Gaal, and Johan Cruyff. Everybody knows. This is basically what we as coaches have to coach or have to learn when we do courses, coach courses in the Netherlands. And basically all the coaches I know in the Netherlands do something of these coaches. Well, we'll cover his method is from the 70s. Raymond Verheijen and Bert van Lingen started writing books in 1997. Our Dutch FA took those books and made them the basis of the UEFA CB&A and Pro, I think, at this moment. So all coaches in Europe have to learn what Raymond Verheijen is telling, what Bert van Lingen is telling. So basically everybody's learning the same thing. Because everybody's learning the same thing, I don't think that we as Dutch coaches develop ourselves a lot. And there's a lot of going on. Okay, how should we practice with players? What should we do? Well, this is basically what we have to do. Louis van Gaal, he wrote the Zeister Visie, kind of how our Dutch FA wanted us to coach players. And Johan Cruyff is kind of how should I say that? He's kind of on the side. Johan Cruyff always said, he had phrases that in the Netherlands no one understood, because in his mind everything was logical and everything made sense. But Johan Cruyff never put his vision into exercises. If you see the way he plays, it was more his talking, his philosophy that created good teams with good players. But Johan Cruyff wasn't, I don't know if didactical is an English word, but he never designed exercises. Johan Cruyff only did what he thought was necessary, but he never wrote them down. So this is basically what we in the Netherlands have to learn, and now Europe has to learn. And one phrase from Johan Cruyff I like is, football is simple, but to play football simple is difficult. Well, what is behind that phrase? How can, if I have a team, how can I let them play simple? We all know little Tim in the middle, having the ball, we see someone is open, and he chooses someone else. He chooses a long ball. Then we all ask ourselves, okay, Tim, why did you make that pass? Did you see Ryan was open on the side? You know, he's fast, give him the ball, he can run with it. Why do players in the field see certain options not as an option or choose something else? Well, that's what I try to understand and try to get into players' minds, that if I work with my team on Tuesday and Thursday, maybe twice a week, maybe 3 times a week, on Saturday, I have to be the one as coach to understand what players are choosing. If I know if I know that a player has got a great long ball, I should not tell him start dribbling. No, I want him to use that long ball, but I want his teammates to know that he can play that long ball and make runs for that. So I want my team to play as a team, not as 11 individuals. If I use the Coerver method, to me that feels that I have a mold of a great technical player, and I try to squeeze every player into that mold. The scissors has to be technically perfect, but a tall player makes the scissors different than a very small player. If you look at the size of the ball, for a small player, the size of the ball is different than for a tall player. But we as a coach think it's all the same. At least that's what I see over here in Holland. So what is simple football? How do I create a learning environment where everything is simple? For instance, if I have to read all of your minds, and if I want to give you, let you give a certain answer. If I say to you, okay, everybody pick a number between 1 and 3. Okay, a lot of you will choose 2. That's not that difficult because I set markers. But if I say, okay, well, you know, you all choose 2, now choose a different number. Maybe someone chooses 1.5 or 2.5, which is still between 3, but just because telling you, giving you more options, you started thinking about different numbers that you maybe did not think of in the beginning, but now start to do. So by making it simple in the beginning, I can make it more difficult later on. And that is kind of the learning environment I want to create. Okay, Coerver, back to Coerver. And this is basically what Coerver taught us, or taught me. Ball mastery, passing, receiving, moves, speed, finishing, group attacks. His famous pyramid comes forward. A lot of coaches know this. I love his method, it's great, but what about defenders? If you only use Coerver, you only create attackers. But I also want to create defenders. So his method is great, but only for certain players. If I look at tactical periodization, I see tactical periodization as the game being a story. A huge story. I see Coerver as letters to make words. Because with letters I can make words, with words I can make phrases, and a lot of phrases tell the story. So basically Coerver is part of the story that I want to tell. But Coerver by itself does not tell the story. Okay, if you have Verheijen, Raymond Verheijen has a periodization model, but that's for conditioning, for fitness. One of the ideas of Raymond Verheijen is that you have to start every game, or you'll be able to start every game with your best 11 players, because they're all fit. You don't have injuries. He found out that a lot of coaches work their players too hard. And if you work your players too hard at practice, they're not fit for the game. So you don't get a maximum performance at the game. And if you keep that up, players will end up being injured because you stress them too much. You don't give those players too much rest. Well, he designed a 6-week model with a certain build-up that you will always be able to play with your best team. Like I said before, I don't want to play with my best team. I want to play with my best squad. And I have to use players number 12, 13, 14, 15 as well. I want to use those too. They paid contribution to play for your club, so let them play. Yeah, but he still has to work on his speed. He's not as fast as the other right winger. Okay, if he's not that fast, you have to change your game style. If he's not fast, don't give him long balls. If he's not that fast, give him other balls. So I want my players to use that other player. And if I can give an example, in my team, I play in a 35+ team with veterans. We have a right back that is very good at stealing balls, but he can't dribble. If he's open, I'm not going to give him the ball because I know he can't dribble. And that's something I have to deal with in playing as a team. And if you look at Verheijen's model, you see at cycle 1, week 1, you play 8v8, 11v11. And you play 3 times 12 minutes. And you build it up, In week 2, you practice the same. In week 3, you play 7v7, 5v5. And you play 4 times 5 minutes. Well, his view forces me to use a certain formation or amount of players. I don't want that. I don't have a lot of practices in a week. I'm not working at a professional club anymore. I only have 2 practices a week. And I want my kids to have fun. If I just give them a ball and let them practice 8v8 or 11v11, I think my players will not make as much progress as if I was giving them a certain program. So Verheijen has great ideas, but I don't use them. If you look at tactical periodization is saying, no, you train everything as a whole. You don't train tactics or technically or physically. You change it all at one time. So Verheijen's idea is good, but I was looking for something else to work with my players. Any questions about this? Okay. Then I went to FC Porto, and a friend of mine, Pepijn Leinders, you'll see him in a minute, he's now assistant coach with Jurgen Klopp at FC Liverpool FC, and I got to meet Vitor Frade, and he talked about his game model. I didn't know about tactical periodization because I was from Holland, and we knew Verheijen, and we knew Coerver, and we knew Bert van Lingen, and those were the gods of football. So we didn't know Vitor Frade with his periodization, tactical periodization. What you see here is basically the morpho cycle, as they call it, with a game on Sunday. On Monday, your team is off. On Tuesday, you work on recovery. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you work in different team sizes to teach them how to play football, soccer in a good way. On Saturday is a recovery but activation to the game on Sunday again, and then you have a complete cycle of tactical periodization. Well, the problem with me is I don't have my players every day of the week. I only, at VVV Venlo, I only had them on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Oh no, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, sorry. Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, I had my players. Most amateur clubs, you have your players on Tuesday and Thursday. So you only have them 2 times a week. Now, if I look at this game model, then or this morpho cycle, I don't have time to let my players go through this tactical periodization. So when I first found out about tactical periodization, I was trying to find out how other coaches did that, but there were no amateur coaches using tactical periodization. There was no coach I could talk to, at least in the Netherlands, about, okay, what do you do in practice if you can only practice twice a week? How can you work tactically? So I had to make everything up, and because I could make everything up, I could start from scratch. I could have knowledge and just put it on the side. So that's basically what I did. And the biggest difference between my tactical periodization and Vitor Frade's tactical periodization is that I don't use transitions in football. To me, there's no such thing as transition in football. It's attacking or defending. And the transition only happens in your mind. You switch from, hey, we had the ball, now we don't have it. What am I going to do? How am I going to defend? And even the attacking and defending part is discussable. Because if my right winger is attacking and my midfielders are following, if I'm a left back, a fullback, I have to squeeze in. So basically, I'm already starting to defend if my right winger still has got the ball. So what part is attacking? What part is defending? Yeah, I made the decision that transition does not exist in my philosophy. It's attacking or defending, and the choice is between them. And I let players decide what they do. Okay, on the left you see Pepijn Leinders and me in Porto. On the right you see Louis Castro. He was head of development at that time in Porto. You see behind him all the players that were playing for FC Porto. And I had great discussions with them about tactical periodization and how to use it. And before I went to Porto, I did not know tactical periodization, but with my philosophy and them talking about tactical periodization, doing everything in once, the fitness, the tactical stuff, the technical stuff, all the effort players should put into the game, that made me decide from, okay, my philosophy is going to be based on tactical periodization. Okay, in a minute we're going to see a video, and that video is going to show what I'm trying to get across, that the game is the game. Players play the game because it's fun. And sometimes things go right, sometimes things go wrong. Players make decisions, and we as the coach have to decide why a player is making a certain decision. So what I'm asking you is each video that you see, there's going to be a couple, you have to decide why is he doing that? Okay, here we go. There's no audio, so you can watch. Oh, that bounced against the post. The other team think they scored. Goalie was celebrating with the bench. Explain that as a coach. You've got referees scoring goals. Oh, why's he doing that? No coach in the world taught him to do that. Don't know about you, but I've never practiced that at practice. How much of this did other coaches teach him that? Great control. How many coaches would have shouted, pass, pass, pass? Look on the left. Great goal. Our friend Zlatan. He never scored a normal goal, I think. Great passes. Wayne Rooney, DC United. 96th minute, 2-2. Last one. Okay. Anyone wants to comment something on that? The why or? Because basically this is the game to me. Everything you saw here has never been practiced. I can't believe there are coaches that set up drills for Zlatan Ibrahimovic to score with a bicycle kick 30 yards from the goal. Or Wayne Rooney to slide tackle at own half without a goalie and cross it 40, 50 yards. Or how far was it? So the game is the game, and you have to practice the game. But the game is never the same. That's basically what I'm trying to get across. Well, to make the game easy, I broke the game down in 10 guidelines. And when you play, you compete to win. So this is basically what I'm asking from my players. If your team does not have the ball, take it away from your opponent. That's basically the same if you're U7, U8, and all the way up to the first team, national team, or Barcelona, or Milan, or United. They all do this. And if you have the ball, you score the goal. That's basically the game that we are trying to get across. And if you can't score, pass it to a teammate. If I have a central defender who's got the ball or a central player who's got the ball, I want him to score the goal. Now, most of the times, he won't be able to score that goal because there's a lot of defenders in front of him. But if he passes it to a teammate, I want him to pass it as if he was going to score that goal. Lots of times I see players having the ball, passing it to another player because they see the ball as an object and they're saying, I've got the ball, now you have it. But I want players to think further ahead, that if I'm giving you the ball, I'm going to want it back at a different position on the field. If you want to play together as a team, you have to understand each other. So at practice, you have to have a certain terminology. You have to use words to each other so you can coach. You have to have a certain atmosphere. You have to know what each other's abilities are. And if you don't win the game, you've made too many wrong decisions. It's okay to lose games, but you have to know, why did we lose? What happened? If you win, you play better than your opponent. I hear a lot of coaches in the Netherlands, if they lose a game, they say, but we were better than the other team. Or the referee made mistakes. or yeah, the other players did something. If you win, you play better than your opponent. So if another team wins 1-0, and even though we had 80% possession of the ball, if the other team wins with 1-0, they win. They deserve that win. That's not something I hear a lot on the field. If you lose a lot of games, well, maybe it's not your fault, but maybe the other teams are so good. It's a mindset that if we lose games, we have to work hard at practice, but maybe the other teams are so good that we'll never be able to beat them. If that is your mindset, then you can start work and develop, and maybe in future you can beat those teams. But if you lose games, it does not always have to be your fault. If you train to get better. And the better you train, the faster your progression will be. These are basically my 10 guidelines that I use in coaching that tell the story of a game. Feel free to interrupt me if something is not clear. Well, the next slide is very difficult because I'll be having a lot of things over the page with arrows, but football is difficult. If you look at the process, we as coaches have to think about. All coaches around the world have the same objectives if they work at practice. More better possession of the ball, more better opportunities, and better goals. That's basically what you try to do when you start coaching your team. You give them tips, you give them hints, you give them exercises to make progress. Well, we ask ourselves 4 questions. What basis is essential for development? So what should we do? What type of players do I need to win games? Most of the times the coach knows something about the opponent. What players do I need to beat that team? What game idea stimulates development in my team? If we play against a very good team, maybe you don't let your players attack very high or put pressure very high. Maybe you draw back a bit more. You have to give your players an idea of, okay, this is what you're going to expect. And how do I transfer the game idea I've got into principles? Principles is something that is connected with tactical periodization, but a lot of coaches don't know how to put their game idea into principles. We're going to talk about that later on, and you'll see all my principles. And then you've got 4 blocks that your players possess. They've got talent, they can do something, they got a specialty, they've got a certain amount of creativity, they've got tactical skill because they know what they should do in a game, and they have technical skills. And that is what you're going to use. And that is what we use to create an environment. Your practice is an environment where players grow up in. And your club has got a culture. At FC Porto, the culture was very aimed at performance. They had youth players that if they didn't perform in 1 year, they got sent out, and other players were invited in. Last week I saw Roger Bongaerts talk about VVV Venlo, where they said that if players come in, they'll stay for a couple of years, something I encourage, but yeah, each club has got its own culture. Within that culture, players will grow in mentally in stamina and in willpower, but that is different for every player. We as coaches have the responsibility to provide opportunities for a player to develop. That's why I asked, okay, do you play with your best 11 players or do you rotate them? Because only if you let players play, they will develop. So your balance between starting with your best players or starting with players that still have to learn a lot, the more you let those players that have to learn a lot play, the better they will become. And that's, yeah, that's a balance that you have to work with. I see a lot of, at professional clubs, players that are not good enough, even though they already went through a whole process of youth development programs. And then at the point they have to perform for the club, they have a coach to say, yeah, you're not good enough, I don't need you. Then that makes me think, okay, but you developed the player for 10 years, how can he not be good enough? Then something in your development is not right. So if you develop players, they're always good enough. Well, the basis that is essential for development is lots of repetition. You have to play for hours. If they play for hours, they can repair mistakes. Those less mistakes you make, the bigger the difference you will create, and the better your training hours will be. Within your training hours, players have to look, position, and think. And the better they do that, the higher efficiency they will get. And for that, they have to use technique. If players have technique, they can cooperate. If I've got lots of passing skills, I have more options to choose from than if I can only pass it with my right outside of the foot. If I can only pass it with the right outside of my foot, my tactical skill will be limited. Because if I see someone on the left that is open, I can't reach him, or I have to turn my body or play different than if I can pass it with the inside of my right foot. So to execute the game idea is between a technical skill and tactical skill. Talent, or the abilities players have got, yeah, that's linked with the right game idea. If I have a tall striker with not a lot of technique, I can pass it in his feet at midline, but if he's got the ball there, he won't score goals. So I will have a striker that can't score goals. If I have a striker that's very good with his head, I want balls closer to the goal, so I have to play more long balls. So if the talent of my player is heading balls, I have to put him into a position where he can head the ball. Or same with left foot, right foot. If I pass it to someone's left foot that he can't use, I have to pass it to his right foot that he can use. But that's all within the game idea. Well, what players do I need? I want players that explore their limits, that find out what they can do and try to go over it. I want players to think in the game, think along in the game, and they have to deal with complexity and deal with pressure. And both of those parts, dealing with pressure and complexity, is something you see at youth players naturally. It's a natural part of their development to deal with those things if you let them play the game. But as we all know, this takes time, a lot of time, patience. We tell him to pass a certain way. It takes weeks, 1 month, maybe years before he gets it. Well, this whole story into exercises, I designed 8 progressive steps to stimulate the game in a time frame. Basically, what I use in my exercises is based on attacking or defending, and is numbers up or numbers down. If I break down the game of football, a lot of times I see fast footwork that is broken up in agility, skills with the ball, kind of the Coerver thing. Passing. I see position play, I see some finishing exercises, and I see game exercises. But if you ask me and people that work with tactical periodization, you don't practice them separately. If I see an agility ladder, it's never just that agility ladder. Maybe you run that ladder, but afterwards you have to control a pass, or you have to do something else. It's always in addition to something else? Well, if I look at what I work with to develop players, I use fast footwork, I use passing, I use team play, kind of the position games, and I use the game in miniature forms. A couple of weeks ago, yeah, I talked to someone who said rondos, but if you're from Holland and you have rondo, then the rondo can only be kind of like the piggy in the middle. You have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 players forming a circle, and then someone is in the middle. That to us is a rondo. If we have position games, that's 5v3 or 8v4, maybe changing colors in different areas, move to different areas. That's all positioning games to us. I call that team play because you learn to play as a team. Now, these exercises I use to achieve my objectives. And eventually that leads to success. Success can be fun. Success can be winning. Success can be getting better every week. Success can be scoring 1 goal, even though you got 10 goals against you throughout the season. If you score a first goal, that can be success. Success comes in different shapes. And I want success not only to be winning, but to play the game, to understand how to play the game and have fun in that. Okay, anyone questions about that or comments? No one? Okay, then I'll continue. Well, this story translated to technical periodization. Like I said before, I don't use transitions. But how do I technically periodize my season or the game? Well, I work with 4 game-like situations. One is defending at opponent's half. And my saying about defending at opponent's half is that it's defending there is easy. The goalie of the other team has got the ball. We know what is going to happen. He's going to kick it long or he's going to pass it to a teammate. So we can adjust our game style to that. We're going to try to steal that ball away from him. Attacking at own half. Some coaches use the term building up from the back. I've got a problem with building up because when does building up stop? We know when it starts, when the ball gets into play, but when does it stop? Is that at the center line or the midfield line? Or is that halfway on the other half? Or is that when my left winger has got the ball? Or what if my left winger drops back and gets the ball before the center line, the midfield line? Is then my building up finished? Working with youth players, building up is a very difficult term for them. So I say attacking at own half. As soon as we have the ball, even with a goal kick, we are attacking. And attacking is easy. If my goalie's got the ball, we know what we can do. We know who's open. We know what runs we're going to make. We're going to know who we're going to pass it to. And if the whole team understands that and knows what is going to happen, then that's easy. And defending at own half, if you're attacking, at some point the other team gets the ball and you have to defend. And that is difficult because most of the time you play numbers down. If you have the ball, you make runs, you try to be open on the left, on the right, in the center, a lot goes on. But at one point you're going to lose the ball and find yourself in numbers down. That asks something of your team. That losing the ball is a transition, but have to keep the other team from playing forward and push them to the side of the field so that other teammates can help you defend. And then the last game-like situation is attacking at opponent's half. You've got the ball, you have to outplay your opponent, you have to overlap, you have to create space. I see strikers just being a striker and waiting for the ball. but that does not create movement by the opponent. So if my striker is just standing waiting for the ball, and he's not doing a good job, I want him to drop back. I want midfielders to go forward. I want wingers to squeeze in. I want fullbacks to run forward and be open. I want a lot of stuff going on in the field if we've got the ball. And that asks kind of a coordination. You have to look at other players. If you look at fullbacks, it has to be a surprise when they come up, when they run forward. They don't have to do that all the time. Other players have to know when they're going to do it and when they're not going to do it. You have to play as a team. But attacking is difficult because you have to surprise the opponent. And surprising the opponent, in a minute you'll see a video, it's very difficult because if you only run forward, it's easy to see what is going on, what's going to happen. Okay, here you see all my principles. This is my whole game. And don't worry, in a minute we'll have a closer look, so you don't have to get your nose into the screen or try to size it up a bit. But this is my game. This is everything that happens every game. And these are my principles. And I've asked other coaches about it, and sometimes you only get a glimpse of what they're doing, keeping the center close, or my fullbacks have to run up the field, stuff like that. But the whole game you never see. So I'll try to get my message across. If I go too quick, please interrupt. My main principles. Tactical periodization works with main principles, sub-principles, and I work with sub-principles. And the main principles are for my whole squad. My whole team is doing this. Principle 1, we've seen that before in my guidelines. If your opponent has the ball, you steal it away from him, you take it away from him. That's what you're trying to do in defending. As a team, you make sure that the opponent can't play forward. Attacking is when in possession, if you have the ball, you score a goal. And that's basically what we've been doing at our workouts and practices. Our ultimate goal is that every time we have possession, we score a goal. Well, we all know as coaches that that is more difficult than it sounds. But basically, that's what you're trying to do. If you have the ball, you score a goal. And then everything in between is the game. Principle 4 is something I focus on a lot, and I don't know how other coaches focus on that, but it's if a player of my team who's got the ball has to try to play the ball in between two opponents. A pass that is given to someone without passing two opponents, I see as a lesser pass. I want my teams to play forward in between two players. If you analyze the game from Barcelona 10 years ago, they were doing that with almost every pass. No center player would play the ball to the right fullback just to pass it. But almost every ball went into two defenders or opponents. So that's basically what I'm looking for. Well, then you see the 4 points: defending at opponent's half, defending at your own half, attacking at your own half, and attacking at opponent's half. I had a discussion with Peter about this. Is it in opponent's half or at opponent's half? Who can help me out on that one? Is this right English? Defending at opponent's half and attacking at your own half? Or should I say in your own half?
I think we typically would say in the opponent's half or in your own half, perhaps.
Okay, in your own half, yeah. So it's not at, but in. Okay.
Defending in opponent's half, yeah.
In opponent's half. Okay, then I have to change that because otherwise it would look stupid in my book. Okay, thank you, Matthew and Brandon. Okay, well, you see the sub-principles. And if you look at these principles, the main principle is the whole team, 11 players. If you practice this could be done in lesser players, between 5 and 8 to 10 players. Because lure the opponent to play forward. If the other team's got a goal kick, I don't want to push up the field that much, because then the goalie will kick a long ball. I don't want them to kick the long ball. I want them to think that they can start passing. So I have to draw back a bit and lure them. But only the 3 strikers, if you play 3-3-3, 4-3-3 as a formation, only the first 3 are in that area. So you talk about 3 or 4 players that are luring. The rest is all playing man coverage or standing in between or looking at the position far away. Brandon, you want to say something or not? Okay.
I'll ask you in a second, because it's the sub-principle 3 and 2 I'm kind of curious about.
Okay, good. Sub-principle 2, you play man coverage, push up the field when possible. So if I play 4-3-3 and the opponent plays 4-3-3 or 4-4-2, then there's you've got too many players in the back. I want to play 1v1 everywhere on the field if the goalkeeper of the opponent has got the ball. If I work with youth players, that will tell me if my youth players, if my players are good enough, if they can win their own 1v1. If I have 3 players playing against 1 striker, and one of them takes the ball away, I don't know if those other 2 are good as well. So if in developing players, I want them to play 1v1 on the field. And having the ball at the opponent's goal, it's a goal kick, if the goalie has possession of the ball, it's easy to play 1v1 because all the players understand that. It's difficult to do, but then you see who will make mistakes, who makes misjudgment, who's not taking part in the game. That comes forward. And sub-principle 3 in defending is, I want to regain the ball in the center. I've had coaches that taught me as a player to keep the center closed and get the ball away from the right fullback. You wait for the opponent to play to the sides, then you try to steal the ball away there. I want to have the ball in the center, because if I regain the ball in the center, I can choose left and right. If I regain the ball in the left, the only option I've got is play back or play to the center. It gives me one less option. So I want
you'd force the ball inside, Anjo.
Excuse me?
You'd force the ball inside.
Yeah, I lure them in the center and steal the ball away there, instead of luring them to the sides and stealing the ball away there. Because if most of the times, if the ball is on the sideline, the other team is squeezing in. And they will narrow down your playing field. If the ball is in the center, most of the time your opponent will spread out, giving you more space if you take the ball away. Okay, defending at your own half. So basically the situation is I've tried to attack, I lost the ball somewhere on the field, the opponent is attacking, then I have to squeeze and narrow the center down. I don't want my opponent to play through the middle. They can have the ball on the sideline, I'm okay with that, because they're not going to score the goal from the sideline. Sub-principle 2, force the opponent to the outside. If they have the possession in the center, I'll leave space open on the side, so they're going to play there. They're going to think there's space there, see that space and use it. So I'm forcing them to the outside so I can press and steal that ball away from them, or wait till other teammates come back from attacking and help me out in defending. And because I played 1v1 and I lost possession somewhere, I'm outnumbered in the back. That's basically the situation I create at practice. Doesn't necessarily mean that it comes forward in the game, but if you're outnumbered in the back, you don't step forward, you walk back and try to close down the space behind you. Because the less space your opponent has behind you, the easier it is to defend. And eventually, if you draw back, your goalkeeper is also a defender who can help you out in solving that outnumbered situation. Attacking at your own half, so building up is what everybody calls it, what I call attacking at your own half. And the goal I set is to get the ball over the center line, over the midfield line. And like I said before, if you have possession, if your goalkeeper's got the ball, basically your main goal is to score the goal. But that's the situation where your players are having difficulties with. So if my goalie has got the ball, my goal is to get the ball over the center line in possession, facing the goal of the opponent. Then attacking at my own half is finished and I'm happy. Everything after that is attacking at the opponent's half. So I create a goal for my players to be satisfied without scoring a goal. So I can say, okay, you did a good job. Now we're going to work on attacking at the opponent's half. Sub principle 2, I hope this is good English, but pass with right choices and feeling for direction and weight. So they have to pass in the right direction and make good choices without losing possession. Sub principle 3, center backs don't position wide apart. A lot of times I see two center backs or center players stand as far wide as the 18-yard box, all the way to the left and all the way to the right. I think that's, for a lot of youth teams, is a big of a distance, because as soon as my left center back gets the ball, the right side of the field is not useful anymore, because he can't reach that with a pass. Because if my left center back passes it to the right center back, most of the time coaches go crazy because you play in front of your own goal, and it's difficult. You create a tense situation. So on my center backs close to each other, so they can still pass to each other, help each other out if it goes wrong, if there's too much pressure. But because my center backs are more in the center, you can use your midfield. They can start rotating. If your center backs are all the way to the side, your midfield won't rotate because those distances will get too big. So I want my center backs to stand. Yeah, if you have those that circle at the 18-yard box, that's basically the space I give them, a little bit to the left and the right, but that far apart, no further, because then I'll have my fullbacks that play on that side. Attacking at opponent's half. Here in Holland, we have a new phrase that is called parking the bus. Don't know if, what phrase do you use if your opponent draws back and stays there? Do you call that parking the bus? Who can help me out on that one?
Yes.
Yes, parking the bus.
Yeah, we use parking the bus.
Okay.
Two buses at some point.
That's what Brendan. That's how Brendan coaches. The Irish, they just park the bus and they wait.
Okay, cool. Well, teams find it difficult to outplay teams that park the bus, but it's relatively easy to outplay them because you have to start movement. If you play from your possession and just use those positions, then your opponent won't move. So if you have a team that will park the bus, you have to start moving. Your striker has to move back and become a center or a holding midfielder. Your midfield has to turn. Just like if you have a blender, if you put that into a substance, you see those circles that start to move. Something you also see in football. You have to start rotating. If you start rotating, the opponent has to make decisions, and decisions by the opponent will eventually cause mistakes. So the basic principle is the most important one is principle 3, make runs around the player in possession. So you have to overlap and keep overlapping. If one player overlaps and runs back, the other player can come in. If you analyze the game from Barcelona, they're just overlapping every time. If you see Bayern München, Arjen Robben can only be good because he got Laat who's overlapping. If Laat isn't overlapping, Robben's cut to the center is not surprising anymore, because that's the only way he can go and shoot with his left. So overlapping is something I emphasize on when attacking an opponent's half. Any questions on this?
Anjo, just one question.
Yes.
When you're explaining to young players and you're using space or the ball position as a reference, how do you incorporate the pressure of the defending team or your opponent? Because you could have build up with high pressure against you, or mid block pressure, or low pressure, and it's still the same space, but the situation is completely different. So how would you incorporate explaining that to your players in your model?
Mm-hmm. Well, basically, I start with defending. So I teach them how to deal with space and time. If I have an opponent, or if I have a center back that will get the ball, if I mark him, he won't get the ball. So I have a defender that say, okay, you don't have to mark him, but you have to stand 5, 6, 7 meters away from him. So the center back will get the ball, and then you can push on. So yeah, I don't have time to get into my my exercises. We'll do that another time. But in my exercises, step by step, players will learn to deal with space, and they will learn to estimate distances, see space, and how it's created. Yeah, is that kind of what the answer you did?
I think so.
Right?
I think so. Yeah, I was thinking more maybe in possession, like when your team has possession. But is that what you were meaning as well?
Well, basically, you create a situation where the players play the game. If an example I can give in my exercises, I use areas, and if I have players that cannot dribble from one area to the other area, that will create that players are allowed to dribble, that at one point have to start passing. So I will give players the opportunity to use the space around them, but the space around them also demands something else of their gameplay. And the smaller the size, the faster they have to think. The bigger the size, the more time they've got to think about passing or dribbling or the technique to use. So with the size you give them, you also give them time to think and yeah, to make a decision. If with pressure, if I give a lot of space and one player has to come from the left and the other player has to come from the right, the bigger that area is, the more time the attacker has to find out where the defender is coming from. If I make that area small, then that defender is immediately at his feet. So I can say, okay, in an exercise where you attack and you work with really young players, you can say, as soon as you start dribbling, you have to touch that cone, and then you can participate in defending. Or as soon as he starts dribbling, you have to do a push-up, and then you can start defending. Then you play with time and distance, and you create a situation where attackers and defenders work with pressure. Does that make sense? Matthew? Okay. So basically, these are all for 5 to 10 players in the field. And then my sub-principles, this is one of the last slides. Then I'll have a video, and then we'll end this this webinar about this. And these are my sub-principles, sub-principles. This is basically what I want them to do at certain positions. Tactical periodization, I don't work with tasks. In my team, players don't have tasks. They have a role. So if my striker has the ball, he's most likely the one to score the goal. But if he draws back, he becomes a creative midfielder. And the creative midfielder can take the position of the striker. Then you switch positions and you switch roles. Instead of saying that players say, you have to stay on the side because you're a left winger. You have to stay on the right because you're a right winger. Now, if my right winger comes to the center of the field, I can take over his position and I become the right winger. And then I have to learn, okay, in his position, what do I do? In my position, what can I do? And that's basically what you see here. Basically, this all makes sense. If you see sub-principle one from defending an opponent's half, choose position to press well. Yeah, what is well? That is what you're going to teach them. Press on a weak foot or leave that open. These are all the decisions you make as a coach. How do you want them to play? And don't lose your 1v1 duel, but keep the pressure. Yeah, this is basically what you as players have to do. And this is the most difficult part because you let them play, but you want to teach them the game. And what mistake do you correct? And what mistake do you just let happen? That's the fun part of our mission as a coach, but also the most difficult one. Okay, a transfer to the game. You saw the 4 game moments, the defending and the attacking. I just created a video where you see this come across. It's the game Netherlands against Germany. The orange screen again.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, those were the 4 different elements that I use in the game. Attacking at own half, defending at own half, attacking at the opponent's half, and defending at the opponent's half. And that is basically what I work throughout the season. That's my season plan. And yeah, like I said, I've been talking for an hour and something. We haven't gone into the drills, but this is what you need to understand if you see the drills of the exercises. So basically, this is my the end of my presentation. Are there any questions, thoughts?
I just wanted to say thank you, like for me and for the group. I think that was one of our more informational sets. The way you dove into the, your principles, sub-principles, and sub-principles was awesome. And again, yeah, everyone can unmute themselves and ask any questions you have. I think one of the questions is, when and if your book will be available in English. I think you have a lot of people that are really interested to see your content, kind of what the timeline is for that.
Well, at the bottom you'll see you can contact me anytime, so we can dive into the drills and the exercises, or talk more about it. There's one thing I'd like to ask, because there were some people that had a lot of experience with tactical periodization, and what did they think of what I said? Can they comment? Who of you works with tactical periodization?
Well, from my experience, Anjo, well, with the licensing courses and stuff, it's a lot of Raymond Verheyen stuff, which is great for like professional teams, but it doesn't really go into how you apply it to a youth setting or, you know, to a program that's not full time. So I'd be very interested in seeing your kind of drills and how you'd apply it to a group that you'd only train twice a week with a game on the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now the thing with Raymond Verheyen is I don't want very fit players for 90 minutes. I want players that are able to play football. I'd rather be 5-0 ahead at halftime than having to battle for another 45 minutes. So I know where he's coming from with his saying, but if I do the conditional periodization with my team, sometimes players don't show up because they know, oh, we're going to be conditioned again. And I want my players to play football and have fun in doing that. And for that, I have to let them play. And yeah, so the Verheyen part I get, but most of the time it doesn't work out for amateur players.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, good.
And I had a question about when it comes to your training and the coaches in your club. Is it based on a curriculum? Your game model, is it based on the philosophy that everyone's using within your club and methodologies?
Yes, when I was head of development, I kind of brought that in, and at VVV Venlo, some parts they're using now, like my philosophy is my philosophy, but it's not the holy grail. You're still depending on the players you've got, depending on the coaches you've got. What I'm trying to get across is that you have to think about, what am I presenting my players? If I let them run around the cone, what is the idea behind that? And is running around the cone part of something players do in my team? So when I start working at Brabantia, the first thing I try to get across is to work on the phrases, okay, now design a drill that is for defending at the opponent's half. That's the only thing I ask from them. It's not like you have to do this drill, this drill, this drill, but how are you going to put defending in your exercise? And if you are doing a Coerver exercise with lots of turns and spins and technical things, no problem. But how are you going to put defending in there? Like I said, the total soccer method, maybe you've heard about that, designed by Roger Bongaert and Mark Huizenveld. They use Coerver designed drills, but they created a new pyramid that if a player that is doing the technical work, he's wearing a shirt, a penny or a bib, what do you call it?
Bib.
A bib. So the player that is doing the technical work has a bib in the back of his shirt, and the defender is chasing that player that is doing the technique and is trying to get the bib out of the back of his shorts. So then you're doing something from Coerver, but you create a situation where something new occurs. And that is basically what I want my coaches to be able to explain. Why am I doing what? And what you're doing is as close to the game as possible. That's basically what I'm trying to do. Then you have my exercises. They are what I would do. And the exercises I would use. And like for instance, the miniature rondos. I see a lot of coaches that put out a square and let the players play the rondo inside that square. Maybe you're familiar with that.
Yes.
And then I would ask the coach, why are you using the square?
Right.
And what would, most coaches, if I will tell you, is say, well, they want to have a narrow space. So players have to play faster. But if I practice in a small square, if I compare that to the game is a huge field. So I'm basically practicing something they don't need it in a game.
Right.
So that bridge you have to make. What am I practicing? If I'm a defender in the rondo and I win the ball, the game stops and I become an attacker without the ball. That does not make sense to me, because in the game, if I regain the ball, I want to attack with that ball. So basically, if I do the rondo, like a 6v2, 6 players around, 2 in the middle, I got rid of the cones. I want my players to decide how far away they're going to stand from each other. And then in the beginning, the players think, we've got lots of space. Well, that's what I want them to see. How much space do I've got? If those 2 in the center can't have the ball, my attacking players are doing a good job. Am I asking a lot of them? No. But if they've done that a couple of times, I'm going to tell them, okay, if you can pass 4 or 5 times, narrow it down, get closer. Because if you want to become a better soccer player, you have to be able to play in tight spaces. But I want the player to create that tight space. I want the player to create a space that he's comfortable in. And if that space is narrowed down, then you as coach will press him into a situation where he cannot develop, he cannot make a decision to take 2 or 3 steps back and control the ball with his right foot instead of being close to each other and having it to pass with his weak foot. So basically, that is the discussion I'm going to talk about with coaches. Okay, what do you as coach want to achieve, and do you achieve that?
Right.
And if your story is brilliant or part of something bigger, I like it. And if your story is, I found this drill on the internet and it looked like a good drill or a good exercise, then I'm going to say, we're not a theme park. We're here to work on something. If kids go to high school or school, there's a program and there's an ID behind that program. Teachers have to find out that ID and work with the program. Instead of, we'll have the kids come in and we'll see what we'll do. I found something on the internet that was fun to teach. I'm going to do that with them. Yes?
No, I agree. I mean, that's why I was asking about your curriculum, because basing it on a school model where there's a plan in place and there's guidelines to follow, but obviously every classroom will have different types of students in it. So how you adapt, as long as there's a base to adapt with, is what I was just asking. It seems like that's what your philosophy is.
Exactly. That's the end. You have the same goal, but you all reach it in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you.
No problem, Ron.
Awesome. Any other questions? I think I have a feeling from this talk will probably be the talk that you get the most follow-up questions from individual coaches, because I think the content, obviously, this is just scratching the surface. You know, I think we'll be looking forward to the translation of some of the exercises and things like that, and look forward on going through them, you know, again, in kind of a part 2, I think, as you and Peter were talking, before. So, you know, we really appreciate your time, you know, going through this and introducing us to this stuff and your take on it.
Well, thank you for having me. yeah, I could go on for hours and hours, and even now do the presentation about the things I do inside the practices. But then I don't know if I would lose attention or something. But you can find me on YouTube. There's some videos there that that explain something. My YouTube channel is Anjo Coppus, so that's not too hard. So you can look there. There's some videos there that explain something of what I do in practice.
Awesome.
And if you connect with me on LinkedIn or Facebook, I'm happy to share some things I've got. And if Peter invites me to talk next week or the week after, then and explain something over the exercises, I'm more than happy to do that.
Yeah, I think we'd be very interested in that, so I'll make sure we arrange that.
Okay, I've got no secrets, so I'll tell everything.
Good.
And I know Mourinho says I've got a book with exercises that will never be published. I'm not going to share with anyone. I'm the opposite. I like to share everything I've got. So we'll see how it goes from here.
Okay, if there's no more further questions, we are Tecumseh Soccer Club, and I think all the coaches who are attended here, thank you very much. Yeah, it was really helpful, I think, and for me, it's like we had already. I have the Dutch book, that I'm already a little bit in advantage here, but I think it was good to like start with this, and for sure we're like want to like, hey, maybe part 2 of it in a couple of weeks. That would be, I think, fantastic. Just Anjo, if you can stay on for a little bit, and we can discuss a little bit more. There's coaches, thank you very much. Right, what Anjo is saying is like, hey, if you have questions, make sure you send it to him. Like if I need to have your question forward to him, like feel free. My email is peter@tecumsehsoccerclub.com, and we can always forward the questions to that. Make sure you're like support us on Facebook and on YouTube. Subscribe, right? Because that will help us as a club too if you're subscribed. And I think we will have like a part of this presentation on YouTube also, that you always can look at back. Okay. Just thank you very much. Have a good evening, and stay safe and healthy. All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.